Welcome everyone to a new YouTube video, and today we're going to be on an educational experience regarding the difference between remakes and remasters and other things because, I feel in a good mood. I finally sorted out the audio issue that was making me so quiet in every single recording, and I had to boost the audio, and yeah, it was annoying. Turns out the mic, when plugged into my laptop, wasn't actually turned up full volume from the actual device. That's why I've had to boost my audio. In the last video, 400% in the edit. And it's still quiet if you watch the previous video. I don't know why I didn't think of that, but I didn't think of that. Now I don't have to sit so close to the microphone to be coherent effectively. But without further ado, hopefully this video should be short and sweet because I looked it up, because this video isn't to attack anyone. I myself, use some of these terms interchangeably. We all do, all have at some point, and there are distinctive differences, and that's what this video here is to try and solve, because I see people disappointed often with a remaster and misunderstanding what that entails. So, I'm going to give you an honourable mention here, a reboot to begin with. So, when a game is rebooted, designers take elements from a previous game series and essentially start it over again. There are usually big changes to characters, settings, or the overall story. They are not typically sequels to previous games in the series, as reboots tend to completely change most aspects of a game in order to make it appeal to a new audience. So they're taking something that's popular, maybe that's got a cult following, and wanting to make it more mainstream. For example, the 2016 game Doom was a reboot of the 1993 FPS game. It completely updated the graphics, as well as adding more depth to the game's storyline and gameplay elements. And let's be real, even as someone who's never played Doom really, because it's not my kind of game, it's an iconic staple of the first-person shooter franchise, isn't it? And I think basically everyone who was excited for the game coming out in 2016 was happy with it. I hear more rumblings about the sequel, Doom Eternal, but that's just the way things are. You start the bar so high, the sequel is always very difficult to follow. Such a fantastic first game in the series, usually. A reboot, in comparison to other types of game reworkings, tends to change much more of the original game material. The entire concept of a game or game series is reimagined in a reboot. Now, I'm going to move on to remakes. Remakes and remasters often get used interchangeably, and this is the whole reason why I'm making the video. In a remake, game developers attempt to completely rebuild the game from its original form, updating it technically as well as making it more playable for a new generation. The main concepts of the game, such as the characters, plot lines and settings, all tend to stay the same within a remake. However, there may be new additions to gameplay elements and changes to content such as items, enemies, combat and more. An example of a remake is Shadow of the Colossus, originally a PlayStation 2 game but remade for the PlayStation 3 console. There were some changes from the original, including a graphic update, a new control scheme and overall better performance for the PS3. Something I might want to point out here is Shadow of Colossus came out for PS4 as well, but the thing about that was it wasn't remade again. So this is where it gets confusing. It was remastered from the PlayStation 3 onto the PlayStation 4. It was the same game, just updated graphically, marginally. So they took a remake and remastered a remake. It seems a bit like overkill personally, but it's one of the greatest PlayStation games of all time. I had it on PS Plus, but I never delved in, and my PS Plus has since run out. Who knows, maybe Sony will continue down the PC port route, and then I'll just start buying classic PlayStation games on PC and having it in higher fidelity. Now, onto remasters, and the problem with remasters is that the differentiation between a remake and a remaster isn't that different, so that creates this confusion about whether a game is a remaster or a remake, and if certain game developers aren't outwardly open about what the identity of what they're doing is, that can create confusion and exceed expectations for a remaster, aka GTA, the definitive trilogy, or whatever it's called, coming out this month. Because all that was mentioned was small lettering on a trailer and no real, distinction. They had it in Rockstar Newswire, but people don't tend to click and read loads of text after watching a trailer. They see the trailer, they analyse the trailer, and then they get hyped or they get critical. That's just the nature of the gaming industry. Were Rockstar Games, for example, to have more of a usual PR where they show their games at like an event show and then talk about it, consumers of their products would be more inclined to know what was going on and the difference between the two. The differences between remakes and remasters is very slight, but there is a difference. While a remake tends to focus on reworking the technical and performance aspects of a game, a remaster is generally made to look good on newer devices and update the game to different resolutions like HD. Some other things can be technically improved, such as better sound, voice acting and controls may also get an update. However, most parts of the actual gameplay stay the same. An example of a remaster is the Spyro Reignited trilogy. These 3 games were completely graphically updated and they recreated the levels similarly to the originals. Spyro's lines, as well as the entire soundtrack, was re-recorded. Now, there's a problem with remasters that I don't think many people take into account. For example, if you wanted Fallout New Vegas to be remastered, the thing is, you could have the game looking amazing. Who knows, maybe they put it on Unreal Engine 4 and it just looks fantastic. The problem is, if a game looks really good but still uses the old sound, you're going to notice it, because sound design has massively improved over the last decade. We probably don't notice the improvement because it's just so entrenched these days, But you will notice, and the problem is, in the case of New Vegas, the person who plays Mr. House has also since passed away. So that inherently would be a problem there, because they would be damned whatever they did. If they used the original voice acting, which is amazing by the way, because Mr. House is such an iconic character, you'd notice the sound difference if they re-recorded everything else. Bar that, you would notice the difference in sound. But if they made the cardinal sin of re-recording it but with someone else, hardcore fans of the game would absolutely shit on it from such a height that it would be this debacle around the release, which we often see regarding games. Now, they could use the old files and then try to improve them, but again, it wouldn't be as good as re-recording them on better technology and the like. So that's why quite often we'll see visual upgrades, but not really any noticeable sound upgrades to games either, because it can be a bit of a nightmare if, the people who did so much iconic work are no longer here to continue that. Now, to end this part of the video, I would like to put some other similar terms in, so it may be helpful to those people who are, I'm not going to say casual gamers, because I think the term hardcore gamer has a lot of negative connotations these days, like people who get really riled up about small things regarding a game coming out, or anything. So just maybe somebody who's not as knowledgeable about these kind of things, because these words will get thrown around with no real definition in promotional material. And of course, you could just Google it and find out yourself. Some people may just not do that. Hence this video, I'm trying to be helpful. But yeah, ports. These type of releases are simply games being reprogrammed in order to work on a different console. When a game is made to play on multiple consoles, each release is a different port for each console. There are usually next to no changes between an original game and its ports, beside differences in controls depending on what console the game is played on. Now, some famous examples here. Knights of the Old Republic on PC is a port because the game originally was designed for the original Xbox and was ported to PC, which entailed a little bit of control jank with that game. That game, which is also being remastered or remade. I think it's being remastered and coming out this month actually. And this one infamous, Batman Arkham Knight was infamously poorly ported over to PC, making it unplayable for a significant amount of time for people on PC. I would assume it's fixed by now, but the thing is, if something's so fundamentally broken, it's still going to be somewhat of a miserable experience to play, with issues that people on console just didn't have, you know. And to be honest with you, hot take here, the problem with that game is you would be waiting maybe 6 months or whatever for it to be fixed. When it's finally fixed, you're playing literally the worst Batman game ever made. It's not even a good game as well. So I genuinely feel sorry for anyone who had to wait for that to be fixed to be playable and then had to suffer through the tank drone bullshit that goes on for like 3 or 4 hours in that game to like artificially lengthen it. Moving on to spin-offs. These games are usually completely different from the main game or series and aren't really sequels. Spin-offs are most often games that take place in the same universe as a game series, yet with different characters and plot lines. There are usually a lot of references to the main series of games that the spin-off is based on. These type of games are very prevalent with a super popular game series such as Pokemon. There are tons of Pokemon spin-off games such as Pokemon Mystery Dungeons, Pokemon Snap, Pokemon Ranger and Pokemon Go to the Polls. Sorry, I had to do that. It's such a cursed line from 2016. I'll never be able to like unhear it or unsee it whenever I see the Pokemon Go. Fun fact for you, my phone was so shit that I never ever played Pokemon Go, and by the time I got a phone good enough to use it, I just didn't care and the game was dead. Not that I'm a huge fan of Pokemon Go anyway, just thought I'd add this little bit of personality into this video. A re-release. This term is pretty straightforward. When a game is re-released, it's usually on the same console it was originally made for. Many game developers re-release the most popular game titles with rebranding such as Greatest Hits on the PS2 and the PS3, Nintendo Selects for the Wii, Wii U and 3DS, or Game of the Year editions for games. I had the Fallout 3 Game of the Year edition. Well, I didn't actually. I knew somebody who had the Game of the Year edition, and back in the good old days, DLCs would come on a disc that if you had the disc, you could give that disc to other people and they would download the DLC to their Xbox 360. Thereby meaning they did not have to pay for the DLC as long as you had the disc version. The good old days, before companies like EA would just cut huge chunks out of the Sims franchise or stuff like that, thereby meaning your first purchase for the game was basically null and void because you were going to have to spend even more money to have an interesting experience in The Sims, because it's just getting cut up into chunks to maximize their profits. But anyway, that's a re-release, if you'd wondered. Are you not entertained? Hopefully this will be such a fun video compared to like the normal serious topics we discuss. Hopefully you've been able to see like more of the personality start to come out in like the videos, because I'm constantly reassessing what I want to do on this channel. You know, I know that I want it to be game related because it's just such a huge passion of mine that I'm, well, knowledgeable about, funnily enough. And I had real fun making this compared to usual. And I'm not saying I don't enjoy making videos, I always like the process of making them, but obviously some topics are just inherently depressing, you know. This one's been light-hearted and fun. This is obviously the first out of a 2-part mini-series. I'll be talking about remaster culture in the next video, maybe something along the lines of just the nostalgia, you know, whether nostalgia sells in the game industry and whatever. It'd be more like a video essay kind of thing, because I am very partial to a video essay, whether it's about gaming, whether it's about politics, philosophy. Genuinely, I love a good video essay. So I have no idea how long that video will take. It might take a while. The idea was to have it out in this month as well, because there are just so many remakes or remasters coming out right now. It seems apt to make a video about it while the ground is fertile, so to speak. But at the end of the day, I don't want to rush it and make like a worse video, if you will. I do hope that you notice the improved audio in this, just my fucking around with a setting, but you know, here we are. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video and have a wonderful day wherever you are. I hope to see you in the next one.